How is everybody doing? Is the mic working? We'll do a roll call here in a couple minutes. How's the light? Do I need more light? I can do more light. There we go. That should work. Hey, there's 13 of you. Okay. I just had to get better light on. I debuted my new haircut last night on Fox Business. Was on the Guten Abend, wo bist du? Ich bin morgen. Es ist morgen in Kalifornien. Sind Sie in Deutschland? Yeah, did Fox last night at 11:30 p.m. And then hung around and talked to some of their producers about some talking points. No, actually, no, you have not. Have not. It's my fault. I have not been very good about doing routine streams. As you see here, it is 3:40 in the morning in Pyongyang. The Trump-Kim summit ended. Kim was not part of the joint statement, the joint meeting afterwards. He was in the air flying back to Pyongyang on the Air China aircraft. And so you've probably heard from a lot of experts today their impressions of the 4-point statement by Kim and Trump that they both signed. I highly recommend Michelle Hannam, Hanham. She's part of the Middlebury Institute for International Studies, a non-proliferation expert. While I love them as a source, they are really, really good. They are subject matter experts. They are nevertheless very political. And one of the things that like Nate Silver and the 538 Institute were able to see today was that about 90% of the commentary and analysis was personal about Trump. It was not about the substance or lack of substance with the 4-point plan with Kim Jong-un. So anyway, you have to be able to separate, personal from the business. And like I say, politically, I am very, far from the spectrum that they display at the Middlebury Institute for Strategic Studies. Boy, you can't see the, you cannot see the clock there for California. So I need to go like that. There we go. All right. And there's John Wayne, and there's my shortwave radios. Here you see Korea. By the way, does this, quick question, I forgot, if we've answered this before, forgive me, but do you see this backwards? Or is this actually, you're reading that correctly, right? Because I forgot. We are seeing it backwards. Huh. Yeah, weird. I guess I could flip it around, but I thought it reversed it. Rückwärts. I thought it reversed it. Well, I could mess. I could mess with it, but then I actually like being able to monitor it. So, you know what I'll do? I'll figure something out. Yeah. So my main concern today, not that it's my job to be the media ombudsman, but I do feel compelled to comment on stuff and junk. I was on with Bill Handel on Military Mondays, pardon me, Tactical Tuesdays today with Bill Handel. And I was not in studio, I was on the phone. But I don't want to sharpshoot other hosts, so I won't name other hosts, but some really off-base analysis today in Los Angeles. One of the nuttiest things I heard is that somehow China is the big winner. If in fact, if you take Kim Jong-un at his word that denuclearization is going to happen, then it's a big deal. It's a very seriously big deal, and I acknowledge that. It was almost accidental. This is not normally how lasting nuclear deals are done, and I say that because the United States and the Soviet Union / Russia, we're 7-0 on nuclear deals. Whatever we're doing seems to work and then sustain. So there are some issues right now with Putin and the INF, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces, but regardless, we are pretty good at these, and there's a formula that worked with the former Soviet Union. Maybe because of the nature of the regime in North Korea, that formula doesn't work. Again, the Soviet Union was run by a small cabal of men who were part of a slightly bigger cabal of men, who were part of a even bigger cabal of men, who were part of the Supreme Soviet of men and women. But they didn't, the guys who were running the country were the very small cabal of men. North Korea is far, far different. North Korea, again, it's a beehive with a queen. It's a third generation theocracy. The official state religion is Juche, the doctrine of self-reliance that Kim Il-sung, the founder of modern North Korea, invented, passed on to his son. His son also added the Army First policy, and those are articles of faith in North Korea. You are taught Juche. When you're 2, you're taught Juche. You're singing songs about Juche. You mark the calendar year by the birth date of Kim Il-sung, which is Juche. So it's year 108 or 109, whatever the heck it is, in North Korea. And this is the basis of the Kim's power, the genocidal dynasty that Kim is a part of. This is the basis of their power, is that there is a better way, and it's not the way the rest of the world works, that only we Koreans know it. And not even all of us Koreans, just the smart ones up here in the north, and it's called Juche, and it's non-reliance on the Chinese, the Japanese, capitalism, the Americans, none of that. It's us, we only need us. So, so just know that, because one of the idiotic things that I heard today is that somehow American business is going to be allowed into North Korea to help develop, and that's ludicrous. The North Koreans will allow pockets of American or foreign business that they will control tightly, and I'm not guessing this. They've been doing this for 20 years. They have these so-called economic zones. They don't even call them capitalism zones. They just call them economic zones because, of course, the rest of North Korea is not an economy. It's a top-down. It's the best example of an inefficient a top-down economy still existent on Earth. No, there's not going to be some sudden embrace of capitalism or Chinese-style market economics, because if you did that, that would be tantamount to flat-out admitting that Kim Il-sung was wrong, and that Juche was wrong, and that everything you've been taught and sung all your life since you were 2 years old is wrong. And that all those parades and the Army First and the whole thing, all this stuff that led you to having nuclear weapons and ICBMs is wrong. So not only would that be a crisis of conscience and rational thinking in North Korea? But it also is flat out false because look at that. They have nuclear weapons without capitalism, right? They didn't need it. The Soviets didn't need it. And the North Koreans are doing it even better. So that religious faith called Juche is why Kim is on the throne. There really is never a possibility that anyone but a Kim would be on the throne. Same with Pharaoh Ptolemy or Ramses. Ancient Egypt was on a meritocracy. Ancient Egypt was based on a very, very wealthy elite who all agreed that they will support a monarch because they are enriching themselves with wheat and amber and gold and a nice house and the whole thing. But they must all agree to not tell the common folk that the pharaoh is actually just a human being. Everybody in the close proximity of Pharaoh knew that Pharaoh peed and pooped, and Pharaoh was a dick, and Pharaoh bled, and Pharaoh got sick, and the whole thing. You just couldn't go down the hill into Cairo and tell the locals that Pharaoh was fallible and was a human. It is no different with North Korea. North Korea is far more analogous to feudal Mandarin China, where you have dynasties going on for hundreds of years. The dynasties were based on the fact that the dynastic leader was surrounded and rewarded and surrounded himself with people who owed him something, owed him their lives. And so they wouldn't conspire against him, wouldn't make war against him, etc. So this is the basis of North Korean life. North Korea, the unification of North Korea and South Korea, which probably won't happen in our lifetimes, it's not simply a matter of erasing a line between East and West Germany. North Korea has pursued a far different path than South Korea since 1945. And it is because of the vision of Kim Il-sung. So just stop saying that. To my friends in the media, no matter what time of the day you're on, stop saying that. Stop saying that North Korea is going to, quote, open up. Cuba can open up, and Cuba can have bars on the beach, and Cuba can try that because there are Cubans living with a memory prior to 1960. They remember what to own a bar or to own your own business or whatever. And part of the reason they're alive to remember that is because Castro didn't arrest them, their kids, and their parents. Kim Il-sung decided to genetically dissect, genetically excise, biopsy descent out of the North Korean body politic. So if you were convicted of disloyalty, questionable statements, lack of commitment, any of the minor little things that could get you thrown into political prison in North Korea, if you were convicted of that, not only you went in, but your kids and your parents. Okay, so you and your spouse, your kids, and then both sets of parents. And Kim Il-sung called it the 3-generation policy. And by the way, it's been really fucking effective because there is no record, not even rumor, of political disturbance in North Korea. The further away we get from 1947, the less there's even rumblings that there's such a thing as political unrest in North Korea. It's a paradise. It's the best place on earth, and the North Koreans are the cleanest race, as they call themselves. So who would want to upset that particular apple cart? That's simply the way it is. That's why Kim and his father and his grandfather controlled information coming into North Korea. It's a lot harder now because when the wind blows from the south to the north, South Koreans will put a thumb drive on a helium balloon, and thumb drives full of South Korean music, TV, movies, all the things that the South Koreans are dominating Asia with. So you have this small nation of 50 million people, and in the middle of a continent with 2 billion people, and the number one music, the number one TV shows, and the number one movies are made by those 50 million people, the Koreans, the South Koreans. Kim sees this. You've heard me talk about this a little bit. He sees this. He's envious of this, but it's difficult because how do you unleash the incredible brain power of North Korea without rejecting Juche? So it would be like the Pope coming out and saying, listen, I had a revelation. There's no heaven, but I want you all to be good Catholics. I mean, literally, it would be on that level. If Kim came out and said, Juche's been a bad idea, the army would probably shoot him in the head and then have a civil war. You just asked, you've heard that Kim speaks German. Yes, he does speak German. Kim went to an international school, Joking Joker 49, Ein Schatz. Joking Joker 49 asked, does he speak German? Yes, he speaks German. He went to Switzerland approximately at the age of 10, and he went to what we call junior high or middle school, Mittelschule, and then Hochschule. He went to middle school and high school in Switzerland at two different schools. He went to one school between the ages of 10 and 15. It was an international school. It was taught in English and German and some French. And then he went to a higher school between the ages of 16 and 18. And he was listed in the higher school. His name was Pak Un, and he was listed as the son of a North Korean embassy worker there in Geneva. So yeah, he has extensive experience in Switzerland and all that. Does he still speak German? Well, I can tell you this from experience. Just like any foreign language, if you don't exercise that muscle, it atrophies. Does he still speak German? Probably if he was surrounded by Germans. In my case, I had forgotten much of my German until I went to Bosnia. And in Bosnia, nobody wants to speak Serbo-Croat. They all speak German. And so my German got way better for a year in Bosnia. So yeah, he speaks English because there were a lot of English speakers in the high school. A few of them knew that that he was the son of Kim Jong-il. They didn't make a big deal about it. You're Bosnian? Oh. Kako si. Šta ima? Wait, what was it? Oh, Serbian AKs. Yeah, the Zastava AK. Someone asked about the Serbian AKs. If you can buy even a California Zastava AK, they are excellent. But the best AK is the Finnish Valmet, V-A-L-M-E-T. The Finnish Valmet is flat out the best AK. It's so good that the Israelis based the Galil rifle not on Russian receivers and all that. They went to Finland and they bought Valmet M76s. Those are the best AKs. But I would have to say the second best are the Serbian, the Zastava. Very, very good. Picked up a lot of them in Iraq. So anyway, another thing that I heard today from an unnamed show on in the morning was that the moratorium on testing, which I explained to certain people on the radio who will go unnamed, that Kim imploded his nuclear test facility because he doesn't need it anymore. It's no longer useful. He doesn't need it. He has the working warhead that he's going to mass produce. The H-bomb model, test number 6 from November of last year, that was a validation. They knew it would work, but they had to validate it, okay? So they don't need the nuclear test range anymore. So it was a completely meaningless PR exercise to implode that thing. So now Trump said yesterday that Kim has stopped missile testing. And I've told people in the media here in LA that once they were able to achieve a 45-minute time of flight with the Hwasong 15 missile, once they shot a missile that had a 45-minute time of flight. It went 2,000 miles above the International Space Station, and it came back down in the Sea of Japan. Once they knew that the missile had the projected time of flight, then everything after that is just improvement, because that test flight gave them data. That data improves their computer models. So they don't need, the more good data they have, the less they need to actually do a full launch. Okay. And I've tried, and I know if you've heard me on the air, you know that I've said this in English to certain shows on the radio, that we do the same thing. We don't like spending money sending a rocket up every time. What you try to do is project the performance of the missile or the rocket, and then you actually launch the rocket, and now you have the difference between what did happen versus what should happen. And now you can refine your computer model. Well, the North Koreans aren't stupid. They've been doing the same thing. They learn lessons really well. They watch what we did. They watch how the Chinese developed their rockets, the whole thing. The North Koreans have better computers than the Chinese had in the 60s. And so when the North Koreans say, oh, we're going to halt testing, it's because they don't have to. And so I heard someone on the radio this morning say that was a crock, that even we test. We just did a Minuteman test 4 months ago. Okay. There's two kinds of testing, and I've explained this in simple terms in English around 8 a.m. on certain radio stations. There is research testing and there's validation. Okay, when you're going from the intermediate range ballistic missile to the intercontinental range ballistic missile, you need to do the process of computer simulation and then launch the actual test missile, see where the differences are, improve it, and then when you finally get the Hwasong 15, you do have to test it. Okay, you're not validating it, you're not confirming it, but you are testing it. So the first test of this missile was fairly conservative. It was simply a launch, and it was only like a 20-minute time of flight. From that, they got all the data that they needed. Now they projected, if we do one more test, and this was a year and a half ago, if we do one more test, it should have a 45-minute time of flight. It should exhibit the following dynamic pressures here and here and here and here. So they did do that final test of the Hwasong 15. It goes up 2,000 miles, 2,000 kilometers or higher, like 18,000 kilometers into space, 45-minute time of flight. And now you have validated your computer model. So you don't need to test anymore. The U.S. Air Force, once a year, pull out a Minuteman III missile from somewhere in North Dakota, and they truck it here to Vandenberg Air Force Base in Lompoc, California, and they are not testing it for research, they're validating it. They pull out a random missile, they take the warhead off, they put an inert warhead on, as seen here, and they validate that the missile works. The Minuteman IIIs were built in the 70s, so we have to do this every year. There's about 360 still in service with multiple warheads on them, but we can't just have them sitting in silos in North Dakota with the possibility that someday, God forbid, we need them, and then they don't. They just go psst. So we validate them, but we're not testing them for research. That's the difference. The North Koreans are no longer researching an ICBM. They have it. It worked. It flew 45 minutes at a 3-degree path. If they launched it, it would be at 39 degrees, and 45 minutes later, it would be re-entering the atmosphere over Virginia or South Carolina or whatever. So That's that. Just so that you understand, when the North Koreans say, when Trump says, "Oh, they haven't done a missile test," it's because they don't need to. They're validating it and doing it all on computer models. So there you go. Glenn Beck is a radio talk show host here in America. He's an opportunist. As a young man in the Seattle area, I know Glenn Beck from the time we were 17 years old. We were both in youth and government in the state of Washington, in the boys' state, the mock legislature. He was a complete weirdo back then. He didn't have any friends his own age because he was a magician. Nice enough guy, that's fine. I lost track of him for years. And then now he comes back as this opportunistic, right-wing guy. He was a huge drug addict and alcoholic when he was a music DJ. And then now he's addicted to LDS, to being a Mormon. He's one of those guys that he gets addicted to golf, puppies, whatever. He's addicted to being a Mormon. So that's Glenn Beck. I had several interruptions in my radio career. One of them called Bosnia, another one called Iraq. Glenn Beck loves, waving the flag and the whole thing, but he stayed in radio, never left the U.S. Me, I had my radio career, but like I say, I had a couple interruptions. One called Bosnia, the other one called Iraq. I know you guys have heard me talking about the .22 caliber insert for the AR-15. I'll show you what it is. There's a really, really good way to like, I have to deal with rabbits where I am, and so I use the Winchester subsonic. See, I know it's backwards, but it's subsonic. It looks like any other, 22 caliber round. It looks like this. It's like any other 22, but it's slightly underloaded, so it doesn't have as much of an audio report. There's two others that I highly recommend from CCI. This one is subsonic as well, and it's at 1,050 feet per second, which is subsonic. Okay, this one is even slower. This one is 710 feet per second. And if you have a target out to about 50 meters, that's terrific. But otherwise, it's hard to find. Otherwise, the Winchester M22 subsonic is terrific. And how do you do this? Well, I'll show you. It's devilishly simple. Don't you know? You take your AR. You can go on Brownell's or Sportsman's Guide, and you can look for, and you'll note here I am with the upper receiver open, and just like anything else, instead of pulling out the bolt carrier group, as seen here, right? So we know our AR-15 bolt carrier group, right? So I took this out, and I have it over here clean. And then I bought the CMMG, so remember that, CMMG 22 adapter. So see what it does. This sabot simulates an AR case, right? See how that looks like an AR case? Well, that fits perfectly into the breech and locks this in there, right? So now this operates with the with the charging handle, when you pull the charging handle back, this is a recoil operated thing. It goes like that. So it operates, just like an AR-15 bolt. And this engages the charging handle, the whole thing. And just like an AR, you stick that in there like that. And lock it down like that. And of course, this is my provisional patent ambidextrous charging handle. It's a straight pull like that. Notice I'm not pinching the charging handle, by the way. You go like that with either hand. But instead of using, for a lefty like me, being able to just with one hand go like that without taking my firing hand off the grip, that's a big deal. So anyway, so it sits there just like a regular AR. And if you don't know this, AR is .223, so it fires a 22 caliber round very accurately. Now here's the catch. This is a 10 round magazine, right? This is a California compliant magazine. You'll notice what's going on there, right? It's a solid piece of plastic with an insert. It's not an AR mag, it's a 22 caliber magazine, but this is 10 rounds. When you go to Sportsman's Guide, it's hard to find these with 10 round mags because in California you can't have it shipped because it comes with a 30 round magazine. And by the way, I should just point out to you that this the insert that this is not a firearm. You can order this from Sportsman's Guide or Brownells or whatever. This is not a firearm. This replaces this. So this is no more a firearm than this is. This is the 5.56 AR bolt, correct? Well, this is the 22 caliber bolt. It is not a firearm. You can order it and it can be delivered to California, but not if it comes with a 30 round magazine. And that's the problem, is that most of these come with a 30 round mag. If you search on the interwebs for CMMG 22 insert, you must add 10 round magazine or else they will not ship it. Even though this is not the issue. This is not a firearm. This is the issue. This thing comes from the factory with a 30 round mag. They do a special California run. So make sure you find a place that has the 10 round magazine. But anyway, sind Sie Linkshänder? Oh. Ausgezeichnet. Yeah, I prefer being a lefty. I'm glad I'm a lefty. So again, this goes in there, just like any other AR bolt. I mean, exactly like the AR bolt carrier. So it is cool, and it's a great way. For instance, if you want to confirm your zero, on your optic, on your ACOG, it's a great way, to shoot, this stuff for cheap than real 5.56 rounds, which are getting more expensive. So for my purposes, I like it because it's subsonic. It barely goes pop, pop, pop. In fact, I'll prove that to you. I'll go out and pop a few off, but without the context of the louder round, it's kind of hard to say. But Price. You should be paying around $220 for the insert and the magazine. Around 220, 230. And what was I going to say? But the deal is, they used to be around 5 years ago. They were 99. Pardon me. They were $99, but they've gone up. So they're about $220. But what it effectively gives you is another rifle. You know, you have another way to go. You can the rifle that you should be drilling with to make things automatic to help your muscle memory. That can get very expensive with 5.56 ammo. If you get this, you have to employ all the same techniques, the same muscle memory to release the magazine and put the weapon on fire, put it back on safe. The whole thing. Where was it? 171. Again, like I say, oh, okay, 171 at cheaper than dirt, but I promise you, for 171, it has a 30-round magazine. So there you go. But again, it's not a firearm, so you can order it by mail. So that is key. Just like you can get an upper. If you want to, another quick tip, by the way. If you want to make a third rifle out of an AR receiver, buy that 22 insert, and now you have a 22 caliber, plinker rifle, rabbit rifle. Also, buy a 300 blackout upper. If you buy a 300 blackout upper, you don't have to use different magazines. You can use regular AR magazines with 300 blackout rounds in there. So, ich weiß nicht. I did not see the moon Frage. What was the moon question? So anyway, wrapping up, about Kim talk. Yeah, I'm seeing just a lot of bad information. The bottom line is the North Koreans have done this before. I tweeted out a link earlier today at Dark Secret Place to prior agreements by the North Koreans. They've come this far before, and then they usually move the football so Charlie Brown, misses it. I will say that Kim seems like a bit of a different cat, a little different from his dad or his grandpa, except that, get off. Except that ultimately he will not give up the nukes, because why would he? The nukes guarantee that we won't invade him. We can guarantee that we can sit there and write on a piece of paper, we will not invade you. But he, and if not him, then his generals would call that a trick, and they wouldn't believe it. They would say, that's exactly what they want us to do. And then, by the way, for the record, it would take literally 10 years to dismantle the North Korean nuclear program. This is what Melissa Hannum at the Middlebury Institute for International Studies estimated. She's an expert. The deal is this. There's an acronym, and it's CVID, C-V-I-D. The correct form is complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement. That is what CVID means. That's what the Obama administration sold us on the Iranian nuclear deal. There was no V. Pardon me. There was no V. There was no I. There was no D. So, but for the North Koreans, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was saying complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. Well, nobody knows what denuclearization means. When this guy says it, we don't even know if that's what he's saying. When we say it, we think it means that anything nuclear from here to here and from here to here will be gone. All nuclear weapons, nuclear power, everything. When the Norks say it, when they say denuclearization, they're talking more in terms of um, turning down the heat on the peninsula and stepping back from nuclear war. They're not talking about disarming nuclear-wise. So there is that. But it would take about 10 years. And also keep in mind, unless you lobotomized all the engineers that are the guys who created the North Korean nuclear program, both missile and warhead, unless you lobotomize them, burn their libraries, and destroy their hard drives, that knowledge still exists. So the idea that you can fully dismantle a nuclear program is a bit naive. So there's that. Ultimately, by the way, the one thing that I will give credit about this 4-point plan is that they are agreeing to set future meetings. So it's at those future meetings where the real work will happen. So that's awesome. Good. If it really leads to that. But it's not going to lead to the North Koreans giving up all their nuclear weapons. What they probably will do is account for all their nuclear weapons and then negotiate for an amount that they can keep. And we'll probably wind up with like 20 Hwasong 15 ICBMs with warheads. You know, again, the North Koreans have declared that their nuclear missiles are not intended for Russia, China, or South Korea, or Japan, but only the U.S. So we can hold them to their word and pledge, not to overthrow the regime and the whole thing. I also heard this morning that China was the big winner because if America leaves South Korea, we're giving up the whole South China Sea. And whoever it was that said that apparently forgot about Okinawa, the Yokosuka, Japan, Iwakuni, Japan, Guam. No, hardly. By the way, if we lost bases in South Korea, you know who would be the first to invite us to have permanent naval bases? That would be Vietnam. And you know where? It would be Cam Ranh Bay. Yes, it would be the same Cam Ranh Bay that we dredged out in the 60s. It now can accept vessels up to 100,000 tons in displacement, which is Vietnamese code word for American aircraft carriers. So the Vietnamese would be the first probably to offer us permanent bases in Vietnam. So anyway, but it's not going to happen because the South Koreans don't want us leaving South Korea. They were as surprised as the Pentagon that Trump said that war games, Kriegspiel, would be over. We spend billions practicing. We spend billions every year in NATO doing exercises. We spend billions in Africa. We spend billions in Korea practicing defending South Korea. And yes, it's a lot of money. And yeah, we could save a lot if we didn't do it. But ultimately, you know what the cost is? Pearl Harbor. That's the cost. If you don't, what's the saying? The best way to avoid war is to be prepared for it. The best way to invite war is to not be prepared for it. You lose lives. If you don't spend the money training, the cost of being unprepared is far higher. The cost for being unprepared is measured in lives. The cost for preparing for war is measured in dollars. Okay? So we have a lot of offensive capability, more than anybody else in the Pacific, with a quarter of our fleet. We have more offensive power floating on the water than anybody combined in the Western Pacific. If you combined China with Russia with Australia, you still would not get the power of one of the three strike carrier groups that we have in the Pacific. So that costs money. We have to maintain that. We can't just drop it. So, and Trump said he always thought the war games were a provocation. Well, in a way they kind of are. It doesn't provoke, it deters, by the way. That's the purpose for instance, Reforger in the 70s and 80s in Germany. The purpose of Reforger was to remind the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact that, yes, we can get hundreds of thousands of troops and pieces of equipment to Europe in pretty short notice because we practice every year doing it. Reforger was not reinforced Germany, but anyway, Reforger was a exercise we did every summer in Germany to reinforce NATO. And of course, the Russians didn't like it. They felt provoked. And and by the way, only civilians who've never been in the military call them war games. They are exercises, some more realistic than others. Quick, while I have you, this it's summertime, so time to read, right? Terrific book called Ian Fleming's Commandos. You know, Ian Fleming was the author of all the James Bond books, and he had a fairly remarkable career in World War II. But it was sort of a brainchild of his to come up with naval commandos, and there's the chap. But this is a terrific book, Ian Fleming's Commandos. So look for that on Amazon. That's one good one. I've been reading this now for 2 years, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. This is terrific as well. I had a chicken poop on it right there. But the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is really good. Eres wieder da? That's on Netflix here. Yeah, the book about Hitler coming back to modern-day Germany. And speaking of modern-day Germany, just to be fair to Joking Joker 49, look what I got. Commando. This is actually a really good book about German Spezialkräfte, about German special forces in World War II. Everything from the Luftwaffe's Fallschirmjäger, the parachutists. The Luftwaffe had ground combat divisions. This is not quite understood by a lot of Americans when you watch World War II movies and all that, but some of the most elite German forces in World War II were their paratroopers. Well, the paratroopers were part of the Luftwaffe because to the Germans that's what made sense. If they're jumping out of my airplanes, they should be my guys. So Hermann Göring is the guy who built out the Fallschirmjäger, the German paratroopers. And the German paratroopers were so well funded that they had their own squad light automatic weapons and things like that. But it's a good book, and there's two sides to every war. And if you can, if you have the ability to be objective, this is a terrific book about how the Germans approached how the Germans recognized the need for special forces around the same time that the British did. The British approach was the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, and also the Royal Marine Commandos, and all that. They had a different approach than the Germans. It is interesting, though, that both sides, the British and the Germans, called their special forces troops commandos. And where did they get that term? Well, it was Churchill who fought the Boers. Winston Churchill fought in the Boer War and was actually a prisoner of the Boers and escaped. It was Churchill who suggested that British special forces be called commandos because the Boer, in the loose groups that the Boers were fighting the British in South Africa, they called each or whatever, but the Boers spoke Dutch. They spoke a version of Dutch called Afrikaans and still do. And they called their independent units riding around South Africa commando or commandos. And so Churchill took that name and applied it to the British Special Forces. That, like in the Royal Marines, a Royal Marine Commando, like 42nd Royal Marine Commando, is a battalion. Commando is a battalion in the Royal Marines. Just like in cavalry, a squadron is a battalion, and a troop is a company. In Delta Force, Delta Forces, just like British SAS, is organized in squadrons and troops. But in World War II, it was Churchill who said, let's call them commandos. So there's that. All right, any final questions for the good of the order? I'll work on why this is backwards. You know, it's weird. I think when it, I think when it posts on Facebook, I think it flips it. I believe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But if you're watching live, I forgot about this. I'll try to solve it. So anyway, any last questions before I find more stuff to talk about? So again, the books, Ian Fleming's Commandos, reads like a spy novel, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, really good. And if you can find it, Commando, Germany's Special Forces in World War II. Very, very good. Well, thank you, Jackie. You look good too. Let's see. What else? Anything else? How about I wipe my sweat? Maybe maybe later today I'll bring the Raven. Die Schwarzvogel. The Raven is doing very well. So did anyone has anyone caught The Expanse? I'm not heavily into sci-fi, but when it's done well, I like it. And The Expanse is on Amazon. It's in its third season now. This is the show that Sci-Fi funded a couple of years ago, started it, and then they ran out of money. They canceled it, but I think Netflix is picking it up because there's so many people that are fans of it. But it's called The Expanse, and it's a great premise, and it's from a science fiction series of books by Corey, Corey is the last name, and in his books, humans have colonized Mars, sometime around, the year 2090 or 2105, something like that. 150 years after that, effectively, Mars has broken away as an independent planet. The Earth is run by the United Nations, and the Earth is still very recognizable to us in 2018, but it's run by the UN. No, I didn't. No, what's the moon message? Ask me again. I didn't. I keep not seeing it. Can anyone tell me what he's talking about? What was the moon message? But so anyway, just like with all, equal military powers, when there are rivalries over resources, they go to war. So this is the situation in The Expanse. Is you have the Martian military power, Earth military power run by the UN, but in the outer belts, in the outer belts where resources are mined, both sides, Earth and Mars, are trying to get what are called the belters, the people that live there, to ally with either Earth or Mars. And so it's a missing, there's a detective at a outer belt on the moon of Ceres, by the way. And he's looking for a missing girl, but she turns out to be part of the underground that's trying to rebel against the Earthlings. And then meanwhile, Mars and Earth are heading towards conflict. But it's really good. It's really, really good. It's like I say, it's not 10,000 years in the future and everyone has lasers and all that. They're actually using guided, missiles in space and things like that, which is what you would do right now. And of course we do have lasers that we could use. It's just that they're not powerful enough to go 200 miles. whereas a guided missile in space, can be 1,000 miles away in about 5 minutes. Whereas we don't have a laser that even in space that can go 1,000 miles. So anyway, I like it because it's approachable tech. You can understand the tech. So anyway, it's called The Expanse, and it's on. If you're an Amazon Prime member, it's free. And I think Google Play has it as well. But yeah, meanwhile, as you guys have been saying, Fauda, the Israeli show about Israeli special operations working in Gaza, Fauda, Fauda on Netflix. Binge watch it. It's terrific. If the Chinese sent someone to the moon and kicked down the U.S. flag, would your government spend millions of dollars just to fix it? I hope we spend billions to fix it. I hope so. I hope we only now we would send a robot. We wouldn't send men to the moon. We would send a robot to the moon, probably with a small yield nuclear weapon, and it would raise the American flag again. And this time, if you came and fucked with it, it would blow you up. So yeah. The third season, the final season is you're in the middle of that on Sci-Fi right now, but start with the first season, obviously. But yes, of course, if the Chinese kicked the American flag down on the moon, we'd fix it. But of course, we put it there in 1969, and if the Japanese want to follow in our footsteps, they can. But just remember, we were there first. Of course, we got there because of the Nazi rocket engineers. But point is, we were there first. So there's that. All right. So we are. What you mean if they stole it? Well, that would be theft. That would be theft. Any other questions? We're at 57 minutes, and I'd like to cut these off at 1 hour because I have a pool to get in. So we'll see when this encodes and goes up on YouTube. For some reason, I thought they were correct. The correct orientation. The camera around. It's just that I don't like doing that. So there. What are we at? Our current temperature here in the Antelope Valley, underneath all the secret stuff flying all around us. Let me update it. At 12:37 p.m. California time, it's 83 degrees. It's supposed to get up to 99. But I like leaning forward in the saddle and getting in the pool before it's 99. Yeah, thank you. C.W. Prescott, Reforger was not reinforce Germany, it's return of forces to Germany. And that was the annual exercise that we did where we practiced reinforcing NATO in the event of a Russian invasion. And there was a purpose to it. It was to practice doing it, and then secondly, be seen practicing doing it. Same reason the Russians exercise, same reason the Korean People's Army, the North Koreans, hold exercise. There's a purpose to it. So